Good morning. This is exciting, huh? Yes, I've been down at the coffee shop this morning and I've never seen so many excited people. It is my pleasure to welcome Lord Jeffery Archer to our midst this morning. I think many of you probably know more about him than I do, and you've come here to hear him speak, not me, but I learned some interesting things about Lord Archer. He's a Wellington boy, the school, not the city. Oxford. Did you know he was an athlete? Yeah, he sprinted for Great Britain, 9.6 seconds for the 100 yards. I think I could do it in about 3 days right now. He went from Oxford to politics, was a member of Parliament. He decided that wasn't for him, good decision, and became an author. And not just an author, but one of the absolute greats. Published in 33 languages, 97 countries, 330 million books, and counting. Imagine that. So what makes him so great? What makes his book so successful? Well, perhaps we'll find out this morning. But here's a couple of ideas. Did you know that when Lord Archer starts a book, he's not sure how it's going to end? You know, he's got a fair idea of the first half of the book, got a very clear idea of the first few chapters, and a fair idea of the first half, but no idea how it's going to finish. And I think if he, the author, doesn't have any idea while he's writing it, we, the reader, won't have any idea when we're reading it. Maybe that's the secret to success. Lord Archer, because we have students here, I hope you'll spend some time talking about your regime, the discipline that you apply to your writing, because I think there's a lesson here for all of you. And the one thing that resonates so strongly with me, because as many of you know, I'm a total Luddite, I'm useless with technology. Lord Archer is a writer who writes, he doesn't type. And I think that makes a difference. I write with a computer, which means I just sort of vomit my thoughts onto the keyboard and then hit the delete button and mess around until it looks okay. He writes with a pen, which means you have to think in whole sentences rather than little sound bites, and perhaps that's why it flows so beautifully. Please put your hands together and welcome Lord Archer to our school.
Thank you for that kind introduction. I must point out that you missed the fact that I should have been captain of the England cricket team, the greatest cricket team in the world. And I think his name is Mr. Virat Kohli, is going to play for us next year. It's lovely to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great privilege. It's always a tremendous privilege to talk to young people who love reading. It's always amazes me when I come to your great country that I usually expect to see a bunch of grandmothers of my age sitting in the audience, and perhaps mothers who are middle-aged, but not everywhere I go, young people. And I want to tell you, particularly because I see so many girls and so few pathetic men out there, I have to tell you, having coming to your country for 40 years, I have to tell you that the next generation of Indians is going to be run by its women. So your chief is quite right. I began life as a politician. When I left Oxford, I wanted to be either Prime Minister or captain of the England cricket team. One of the disadvantages of not being able to bat, bowl or field meant that I had to concentrate on being Prime Minister. And that all went wrong, and I got myself into terrible debt and had to leave the House of Commons and sat down and wrote my first book, Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less. Well, I'm glad you feel that way, because I can tell you 14 publishers turned it down. The 15th publisher published it, and it only sold 3,000 copies worldwide. Then it went into paperback and did all right, but the breakthrough was unquestionably Cain and Abel. That did change my whole life. So I'm going to start by asking you, how many people in this room have thought about writing a book? How many people in this room have written a book? Gosh, very good. Very good. And how many people have been published? We've still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Very good. The truth is very cruel. For every 1,000 books sent to a publisher, 1 is published. For every 1,000 books published, 1 gets onto the bestsellers list. For every 1,000 books that get onto the bestsellers list, 1 goes to number 1. It's a cruel game. But, so when a young person comes to see me, and a lot come to see me about writing, they say, what should I do? I want to be a writer. First I say, I'm not a writer. I'm a storyteller. And that is a God-given gift. You can be well educated, you can be well read, you can have read the classics. Of course you can write. But it's a God-given gift to be able to tell a story. And it's no different. So when these young people come to me, they say, what should I do, Jeffrey? And I say, go to the ballet. They say, what? I say, go to the ballet. Why would I go to the ballet if I want to be a writer? I said, I want you to go to the ballet and look at the prima ballerina from the Bolshoi. I want you to imagine how many hours she has spent, how many months, weeks, and years it has taken her to be the prima ballerina. And then I want you to look behind and see the chorus. And I want you to imagine how long it's taken for those girls at the back to be in the chorus. Then I want you to think about all the girls who want to be in the chorus but can't get on the stage. It's no different with writing. The point you made, the discipline is just the same. I rise at 5:30 in the morning. I write between 6 and 8. I take a 2-hour break. I work between 10 and 12. I take a 2-hour break. I work between 2 and 4. I take a 2-hour break. I work between 6 and 8. I'm in bed by 9:30, 10, and up again at 5:30 the next morning. The first draft takes roughly 50 days, 350 hours, and the latest book, it doesn't get any easier. The latest book, if you have this one, you have the 14th draft. I wish it was easier. I wish in old age I could find a shortcut but there is no shortcut. It's just as hard every time. If you want them to maintain the standard, of course I could hand in the third draft. Of course I could. Call it a day. Of course I could retire. But no, I want it to be the best I can do. And that still takes 14 drafts. And it wasn't easy at the beginning. I can't pretend it was. And you mustn't give up. Because the first book, you mustn't give up. The first book, Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less, was turned down by 14 publishers. And that's pretty dispiriting. So if you are a writer, all those people who put their hands up, don't give in. But the second thing I would say, looking at this young audience, and there are one or two old fogies, but not many, mostly young, is you don't have to start too early. I didn't write Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less until I was 35 years old. And I didn't write Cain and Abel until I was 38 years old. So there's no hurry. You can begin on articles, short stories. You can do other things. So don't be in a tremendous hurry to write the great Indian novel. Well, when I say the great Indian novel, I was dining 20 years ago in your great city, and the senior critic for the Times of India, I said, now look, who should I be reading? You've been a critic now for 20 years. Tell me who I should be reading. And she said, forget the sacred cows of Indian literature. You should be reading R.K. Narayan. And I started reading R.K. Narayan the next day, and I'd finished every single thing he'd read 2 weeks later. Why? He is that magic combination of storyteller and writer. So put up your hands if you've read R.K. Yes, I thought so. And any of you idiots who've missed him, now's your chance. Because nothing is more exciting than discovering a new author. So I'm going to give you one. At the age of 60, I was traveling through Austria, and an Austrian professor said to me, I asked the same question. He said, have you read Stefan Zweig? Hands up, who's read Stefan Zweig? There you see. There you see. He is wonderful. A great storyteller and a great writer. He tragically committed suicide after only 2 novels because he thought Hitler was going to win the war. But luckily he wrote many short stories and many histories of Europe. So if you haven't read Stefan Zweig, what a thrill you've got coming. I always think if someone says to me, who do you wish you could start with again? I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful to clear one's mind and discover a new author? I said, yes, I'd like every single piece of knowledge I have of Shakespeare to be removed from my head. Then I could start again. Imagine not knowing the end of Romeo and Juliet and wondering if they'd both live, if one would live, if they'd, and people forget about Shakespeare, that he wasn't only the greatest prose writer and the greatest poet, he was the greatest storyteller. The trouble is you all know the endings, but if you didn't know the endings, what a remarkable thing that would be. So I suspect, having seen all those hands go up, I'm in the presence of a lot of authors. So this will surprise you. I much prefer to not speak for a long time, but to hear your questions. Because it's through the questions I can decide what you want to hear. Because I get tired of leaving and people rushing after me and said, I just wanted to ask this one question. Fine, you're going to get the chance. Now you human beings over there, go and get a seat. Go on. Go on, come on in. All of you who you were late, 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 you were late. And it's amazing you got here at all. You're going to blame it on the traffic, are you? Yeah. I was at an audience last night and I said, put your hands up if you took more than an hour to get to me. Everybody put their hands up. What I don't understand, before we go into questions, you must tell me, because you're posing there as an educator. So I want to know when it comes to your traffic. Please help me, because I'm a puzzled Englishman. Who teaches young people that if you've got a car and you're driving, you should try and get the white line to go down the middle of the car? Who teaches you that if you're in a tractor going at 5 miles an hour, you really should be on the outside lane? And if you've got a little taxi, you should be bobbing in and out to try and get to the outside lane. And if you've got a motorcycle, you should be sitting on the middle lane, taking up the whole lane on your own, plodding along, keeping everybody... I just don't understand. I mean, I've always wanted to be President of the United States, but I've decided there's a tougher job. Minister of Transport in India. I took an hour and a half to get to you this morning. If I was leaving London, I'd be in Manchester by now. And my people who are with me are sick of me because I grumble. I said, where's the boss? I didn't grumble this morning, which was, you get used to it after a time. And he explained, you just take it as part of your life. And I'm such an impatient person that I can't, I'll tell you how impatient I am. It's one of my great weeks. I can tell you how many seconds in my flat in London, how many seconds it takes to get from the floor to my flat. It takes 38 seconds. I've worked out I will spend a week of my life in that flat. So I got my trainer to give me 30 seconds of exercises I can do. Well, don't laugh, you layabout. I can do 30 seconds of exercises going up and down, which is 6 minutes a day, which is 1 week a year. Oh, I don't know what I came to. Why did I come here? So I am, and I have the poor staff have got used to it. Poor things probably haven't. I am impatient. So question number 1, where are we? Give them a... Hello, how good of you to come. I mean, where you come from Australia, or are you... I mean, you just got here. I mean, what's your excuse generally? It's very nice to see you. And the meeting is over. Thank you very much indeed. You blew that, didn't you? You're what? Hold it. She's got an excuse. Hold it. Give her the microphone. Wait, give her a... What's your embarrassing excuse? I put the microphone so everyone can hear. Up here. Up to your mouth.
Where?
No, it's working. You're just not working. Up to your mouth. Yes.
Now can you hear me?
Up.
Here?
Now, tell me.
Yeah. So I'm a big time fan of yours. And it took me 1.5 hours to reach here. So the Google took me to Oberoi International, somewhere in RA Colony. And I actually felt that, okay, this school is in some kind of village because I'm from JVLR. So I was like totally lost. And I'm going to write a big time letter to this Google people who actually misguide people like me. It was crazy.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I just say, basically, you're pathetic. You should have got up last night and started walking. First question. Oh, we can go home. Nobody question. Oh. Sir, have you got the microphone, sir? I can hear you, sir. I'm deaf, but I can hear you. Thank you very much indeed. You've got my. You look about 80. You've got my first book, which I know is only that edition is only 3 weeks old.
I know. I just bought
So
it
what's your
outside.
excuse?
Well, I have one at home, but I want
You've got the real thing at home.
Absolutely. Pleasure being here. I know it's very difficult for an author and a parent to choose from among their creations. And my question to you is, which is your favorite and least favorite book? I know, as I said, it's difficult choosing first among equals, which again is one of your wonderful books. Which is your favorite and which is your least favorite?
Well, least favorite's impossible. It's like children, isn't it? You can't. I mean, the world has decided that Cain and Abel. I mean, it's been read by 100 million people. It's sold 32 million copies. It's on its 125th reprint. Who am I to argue with the general public? I'm sentimental about the book you have there, Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less, because it was the first book I ever wrote, so I'm sentimental about it. I think the Clifton Chronicles may be the best thing I've done in the sense of a piece of work, but the critics think Paths of Glory is the best thing I've done, and if they don't, they think Prisoner of Birth is. And where I'm lucky is the fans, although they're fascinating about Cain and Abel, the fans all have different favorites. And that's lovely. I'm glad I'm not a one-book author. I'm glad I'm not just surviving on one book for the rest of my life. So I love them all. I love them all, really. And this latest one has been the biggest challenge of all. Heads You Win. The hardest one to write. Been the most difficult. Yeah, I'll go with Prisoner of Birth. That's the best thing I've ever done. Yeah. Next. No, you're not getting a question because you're far too bossy for a start. And you told me already you were going to. No, I'm not going to you either. No. Oh, possibly later. There's a letter. No, oh, this young man here.
Lord Archer, I'm holding a book, Honor Among Thieves.
Yes, sir.
Right? At the end of the book, I
Don't tell them too much.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, okay, all I'll say is that I expected the book to end a lot earlier than it did end. Was there a part of the book that wasn't in your first, 5 or 6 drafts, and you just added?
That can happen. Yes, because you made this very interesting point, and I haven't expanded on it. When I get up in the morning, I know about 3 pages ahead. If I'm lucky, I know a chapter. So as I get near the end, I can't tell how it's going to end. And I keep it that way for 2 reasons. One, it's the way I am. But 2, if I don't know, you can't know. So I've never had a letter saying, well, I knew on page 7 he was going to die. It's never happened. And with that book, I have to admit, Honor Among Thieves, I haven't read it for 20 years. I never read a book after I've finished it because I'm frightened I'll want to do a 15th draft. So I get on with the next book. So in a way, I can't fully answer your question other than to say, I don't know until I get to that point where it's going and where it will end. I pray every morning that I get up and I think, can I really do it again? It is a total, I'm just so lucky. Once upon a time, off I go. I'm just very lucky. Next. Lady on the end there. Who's ever got the microphone?
May I ask a question right here?
Who are you? I didn't say you could ask a question. I was, right.
I'm curious to know whether writing started as a passion and moved into profession, or in your head when, when with success and with the pressure that I'm sure has come with it, did you find yourself in a soup about writer's block, about focusing too much on it as a profession and therefore losing the plot in the passion side of it?
I can honestly say that I wanted to be Prime Minister.
So it was neither.
I got to writing by mistake. It was by mistake. I wonder how many people fulfill the Proustian theory. We all end up doing the thing we're second best at. So if I'd remained in politics, I might well have become the Under Secretary of State for Health and retired unknown and wouldn't have been able to draw one of you today. So it was by mistake. And the writer's block question, never had it. I have a beautiful home in Mallorca where I write. I've built a study into the cliff and I can only see the sea. And I've named the building Writer's Block in the hope that it will never happen. But going back to the young man's point there, I may not get writer's block, but I do get problems that have to be solved. One of the biggest ever was in a book called As the Crow Flies, when I'd got my hero, had to go to Australia to go to an old people's home to see a lady who was very old, because she could tell him the one thing he needed to know to solve the problem back in England. So he flies over and he goes to see this old people's home. He knocks on the door, and the lady, who's a matron, a Scottish matron, she says to my hero, she says, I'm very sorry, she died 3 days ago. Now, the great Corley Smith, arguably one of the great editors of all time, edited J.D. Salinger, and a great honor that he edited Cain and Abel. Corley said to me, if you can get yourself into a problem you can't see your way out of, the reader can't see the way out. Now, the easy thing to do would have been her, in her dying days, she's sitting in bed, she tells him the thing, the problem is solved, boring, boring. Having set myself, going back to your point about 3 days ahead or one, I'm stuck. I haven't got writer's block. I'm stuck. It took 3 days of walking round a golf course for hour upon hour. It's got to be simple. It's got to be believable. They've got to nod. Corley Smith's great line, if when they're reading they nod, you've got it. 3 days. And then suddenly, this Scottish lady says, are you going back to England? Yes, he says, yes. Here's a letter she asked me to send. And if I give it to you, it'll save the stamp. So she has her reasoning, because she's a Scottish lady. And he's got the letter. So now knows everything. That took 3 days. That wasn't writer's block. That was a problem. As I said, the easy way out is to say, she sat up in bed and told him everything. But if you want 100 million people to read you, you better set a problem they can't see the way out of. Next. The lady there, and then the lady there, then the lady there. Men are so pathetic, aren't they?
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Have you ever felt envy about any other author? Like, did you ever feel that I wish I would have written that?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Who? I mean,
Oh, Stefan Zweig.
okay.
Oh, yes. Yes. I put down, I was at my grandchildren's birthday party. One of my grandchildren, I've only got one granddaughter. I've never had a daughter. I've finally got a granddaughter who I've named Boadicea. She has a real name, but I've called her Boadicea. And I can't wait. She's 2 years old. I can't wait for her to say, "Can we go shopping?" And they have now, I'm sure they have them in India, they have them everywhere, they have these entertainers for big parties. And this entertainer was going around going, "What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to..." And she got to me. She said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I said, "I want to be Stefan Zweig." So yes, he's one. And of course there are individual books you've read. Of course. And some of the most famous ones you wouldn't want to have written. The problem is, there's a book out this year that I think is wonderful called, because I read a book a week, there's a wonderful book out called The Tattooist of Auschwitz, which I think is amazing, and I wish I'd written it. And it's gone to #1 like that, written by a New Zealander, a New Zealand lady who has only ever written one book, and she'd be wise never to write again. It's so, no, she can't equal it. She can't hope. The story is so remarkable. She can't hope to equal it. I wish I'd written it. So yes, there are times, but you have to live with the fact you are what you are. So you can't be J.D. Salinger. You know, you are Jeffrey Archer and you're stuck with it, poor thing. That's the way it is. So yes, there are books I wish I'd written, and I put them down at the end and and I learn from them, of course. I learn I hope I do, learn an immense amount from them. And maybe it gets in there. I think after 40 years of writing, I think I'm a better craftsman, but I don't think I'm a better storyteller, because a third of my fans still think Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less is the best thing I've ever done. And that was my first book. I'm a better craftsman, but the storytelling gift was always there. Give her a mic. Where's the microphone person? You're so slow. Oh, it's a man. Get running, you pathetic thing. Faster.
Hi. So a lot of my favorite authors have said this, and I was wondering if it applies to you as well. But they say...
You've met lots of famous authors, have you? They're regularly popping round for tea, are they?
No.
A sort of 2-hour car journey, and then they come and have tea with you, do they?
No.
Yeah, and I mean, that must be nice. What Nobel Prize winners lined up outside the door so you can chat to them. Yes, here I am.
No, in like interviews, online interviews. So, because you say that you only know the first few chapters.
Yes. Sometimes not that much.
Not that much. So, do you let your characters guide your story? Like,
do I let my characters guide the story? They sometimes take over the blooming book. I'll give you an example. I wrote a book called The Prodigal Daughter, which is the story of the first woman president of the United States. And I wrote it 35 years ago. It's about time the blithering Americans woke up and appointed a woman president of the United States. So I decided it was going to be Florentina, the daughter of Abel, who marries Cain's son. I thought, this is going to be my first woman president of the United States. So the first thing I realized was, if you're going to become president, you have to be highly educated. It's only recently that has not applied. So, no, if you're very good, I'll end on my Trump story, but no. So I decided this girl had to be exceptional. Florentina. I love the music, but no thank you. Florentina had to be exceptional. So she had to be educated, so that by the age of 18, she was ready to do whatever she was going to do in life. So I thought, how will I do that? I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll bring over an English governess called Miss Treadgold, who will educate her. So that when she's 18 and just going off to Radcliffe, going off to equivalent Harvard, she will be ready. So I bring over my English governess, who's a highly educated woman, and she educates this child. And this child is taught. And I tell you first that I had decided she would last, to answer your question, I had decided she would last 5 pages. Get her in, get her out, she educates the child, shove off, goodbye. 152 pages later, she's still there. Why? I fell in love with her. I couldn't let her go. She was too good to be true. And here she was educating this child who was going to be president of the United States. And one of the things she taught, and these things come that day, that moment. One of the things she was going to teach the child was to not show emotion, to be controlled, to be in charge of yourself. And Florentina learnt, for those of you who remember the book, Florentina learnt to put her fingernails into her hand when she wanted to cry, to stop herself crying. She'd put her fingernails in, and she did this right the way through to when she was president. She was still doing it as president of the United States. And Miss Treadgold had taught her that. And finally, at the age of 16, Miss Treadgold realized it was over. She had nothing else to teach her. I must go back to England. And they go back, they go to New York, they go down to the seashore, and there's the ship she's going to sail away on. And she's going to lose her. And she wants to cry. She so much wants to cry. So she digs the nails into her hand so she doesn't cry. As she watches Miss Treadgold climb the steps up to the ship and wave to her. And we never learnt Miss Treadgold's name, so I was holding for 152 pages, a simple secret that should astonish the reader in the same sentence that we're going to make the reader gasp. That's what a storyteller does. So she's gripping the nails into her hand. And Miss Treadgold climbs up onto the ship and waves goodbye. And she is standing there, desperately trying not to cry. And I wrote the sentence, the simple sentence. Winifred Treadgold went to her cabin, sat on the end of the bed, and wept. She couldn't let the child see. She had to do that. And sentences, if you're lucky, sentences come like that, one in a book, if you're lucky. Next. Do come and get a seat rather than sit on the steps. I realize you started out sometime early this morning. Anyone? Next. Lady there. Oh, we'll take the gentleman here. It's too much to miss. We'll give him a small round of applause for just coming. Sir.
Hello, Lord Asha. My question is that when you are about, what is it about a story that propels you to write it? And the second part of the question is, how do you craft your characters? And do you fine-tune as you go along? Because after reading Cain and Abel, I immediately, within 3-4 days, read it again. I couldn't believe what I had read, and I cried when the mother scene was there. It was, and still when I think of it, I get goosebumps. So how do you do that? What is it about a story that makes you say that, yes, I'm going to tell this story? And also, how do you craft your characters? Do you observe in real life, or is it part of your imagination, or what's the whole process?
Take the characters first. They develop, of course, as the book is going on. But I've had this immense privilege of meeting so many interesting people in my life, at so many levels, at so many stratas, that I enjoy building a character, developing a character, making a person grow and grow until everybody feels they know them. And sometimes when I kill someone, in the first of the Clifton Chronicles, Only Time Will Tell, I killed off old Jack. I had more letters about killing off old Jack. Actually, no, I had more about Lady Virginia. But I had more about killing off old Jack than almost any character. Because sometimes you have to kill one of your favorite characters. Life isn't about everything going perfectly. On the plotting, I don't sit down if I haven't got a theme in my mind. So for Cain and Abel, two men, both born on the same day, one with everything, one with nothing. They will meet once, and it will change their whole lives. Doesn't get much simpler than that. 600 pages later, you've got Cain and Abel. So it's usually a simple theme. And if you take the latest book, Heads You Win, I was reading Colin Powell's biography, My American Journey. And his mother, a seamstress from Jamaica, she wanted to decide whether to go to England or whether to go to the United States. And we all know that Colin Powell's mother went to New York. And he was born in Harlem rather than Hackney. And so I got to thinking, wouldn't it be interesting if he'd gone to Britain? Would he have become an officer in the British Army at that time? No. We were much too snobby a race to have had a black officer in the British Army. Would he have become head of the armed forces? No. Would he have become foreign secretary? No. So it became a fascination for me about someone going somewhere else. If we go 30 years forward, we now have a Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, who is Pakistani. And the shadow Home Secretary is the first black woman MP. So the world has moved in Britain very quickly in 30 years. So I thought I'll take it to its next extreme. I'll take a Russian coming out of Russia at the age of 16, very bright kid called Alexander, and having to escape because his father has been murdered by the KGB, so he's got to escape. And I thought his mother has to decide whether he'll go to England or whether he'll go to the United States. I'll do both. Now there's the twist. So I put the same human being in Britain and in America. And I followed two lives with exactly the same human being. The only thing that's changed is they've arrived in different countries, and therefore different situations arise. So that was the simple idea. Heaven knows where it came in the middle of the night, but there was the simple idea. The challenge of writing it is been the biggest challenges in my life. I mean, one of the toughest books I've ever written. But that was where the idea came from. And the characters build themselves. But of course, in the case of the character of Alexander, who becomes Sasha, the more common name for Alexander in Russia, or Alex, those were the two, following their two lives. I loved that. I found that, I mean, I love my job. I found that terrific fun and a great challenge. How many more can we do before we're thrown out? Where's my boss? Couple more? Two more. What?
Sorry, there are two more there.
Lady there, lady there. Where's the man with the microphone? You've got one, good.
Good morning.
Good morning. And then I'll end on my Trump story. If you're very, very good, I'll end on my Trump story. Yes?
You spoke about your regime and discipline in the beginning.
Slowly and clearly, I'm deaf and old.
I said you spoke to us about your regime and discipline in the beginning of your talk today. And I noticed that you take an awful lot of breaks all day. So,
Breaks.
you take a lot of breaks. So
Before you go any further, I put out a picture of myself reading to my grandson, age 4, Peppa Pig. And no, this gets worse. I put it out on my Twitter, I put it out on my Facebook, I had hundreds of emails saying, "Get back to work, you layabout." So I take breaks. My wife can do 5 hours in a row. I do splits of 2. Okay, I've got told off. What's next?
my question, no, I'm curious that what do you do other than the basic stuff? Yes, eating. It's bothering me since I heard your regime. I want to know.
You want to know what I'm doing in the breaks?
Yes.
We got a sick lot here this morning. First break, I have breakfast, a bath, clean my teeth, shave, go to the lavatory. Second break, I go for an hour's walk, have lunch. Third break, I go for an hour's walk, read. Fourth break, I shush woman. Fourth break, I have dinner. I may watch something on television. I go to bed around 9:30, 10. What else do you want to know? You want to know who I go to bed with? I'm not coming here again, I can tell you now. So, we've got one more question. Someone over here, someone over here. There are actually about 400 hands still up, but still. Yes. No, actually, I'm the star. He's the headmaster. Right, where are you going? You make the decision, then I can't get told off. Give it. Who's got a microphone?
Yeah, right here.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
You'd like to know what I do when I'm asleep.
So you mentioned your latest book. You could have sent in even the 3rd draft, but you didn't, and you stayed on till the 14th. So
Yes.
when you reached the 14th, what tells you that yes, I think it's ready?
How do you know you've actually ended? When you're down to a comma here, a word there, a sentence every 20 pages, you're pretty well done it. My wife tries to drag it away from me because I don't let her read it until the last draft. My wife tries to drag it away from it. And she says always that it's a good thing I never read them again because I'd be going into bookshops going, I have page 117, I just changed that one word. That's how demanding it is. And to you ladies, I raise the subject of my wife because she's a truly great inspiration, both for me and for women in my country. She, after leaving Oxford, she went to teach in Cambridge. She's a chemist. And she decided when she was 40 that she was going to have another life. She said, I can't go on teaching chemistry for the rest of my life because chemistry is an ever-evolving subject. Therefore, I will try something else. And she went into hospital administration. And she got on the board of Addenbrooke's Hospital, Cambridge University's Trust Hospital. And 7 years later, she became deputy chairman. And 3 years after that, she became chairman. And she was chairman for 10 years. And in the last 3 years of her 10 years, the hospital won Best Hospital in Great Britain twice in 3 years. And Her Majesty the Queen made her a dame. So she's now Dame Mary Archer, and she thought that was the end of her career. And then the Prime Minister rang her up and said, we'd like you to chair the Science Museum. So she's currently chairman of the Science Museum in Great Britain, and she's the first woman ever to chair a museum or gallery, a national museum or gallery. I mention this because sometimes one gets the impression you're a bit behind with what women have achieved. We're just as pretty prehistoric in Britain as well. So the next generation, I hope she's inspired a generation to believe they can do amazing things. And there, of course, will have been women in this country, not least Mrs. Gandhi, who was at the same college as my wife and the same college as Margaret Thatcher. All of them, can you imagine the three of them in the same college? And so she's been a tremendous inspiration for my life. And I always mention her because I believe the women in the audience have to understand that nothing is unattainable. Now we live in an age. I had a remarkable situation the other day. I went to the Jaipur festival and spoke to 7,500 people. And the day after, I went to the palace, and the curator, a lady, was kind enough to show me around. And you're 35, incredibly bright, curator of the Palace Museum. And I couldn't work out if she'd ever read anything I'd written. So as we said goodbye, she said, I'd just like to say that I've read The Prodigal Daughter 18 times. I said, what? She said, yeah, I've read it 18 times. I said, why? She said, because you made me believe that a woman can achieve anything. And I read it again, and I now believe, because of that book, that a woman can achieve anything. And I thought, I don't write books with a philosophical aim. I write books to entertain. I write books to make you turn the page. And here was this curator of the museum being strongly influenced by A Prodigal Daughter. So I was very touched by that and very moved by the fact. She doesn't hold the record, I have to tell you. The record is held by an idiot Australian. An idiot Australian lady from Melbourne has read Cain and Abel 342 times. She actually knows it off by heart. She knows it far better than I do, which is slightly embarrassing. Shall I end on my Trump story? Oh, I didn't get really convinced then. Shall I end on my Trump story? Oh, right. Are you concentrating and ready? Yes. Trump goes into a room. He goes up to the counter and he says, I'd like a hamburger, French fries, and a Diet Coke. And the lady behind the counter says, I'm very sorry, Mr. President, but this is a library. Right. Got it. Understood. I'd like French fries. I will end by saying thank you. I will end by saying I'm a simple storyteller. It's a God-given gift, and it gives me the privilege of standing on stages like this all over the world and saying thank you.